Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name is Bob, I'll be your host. Werewolves are a very tough creature to kill. They're not as long-lived as vampires are, and werewolves have been around pretty much as long as there's been humans. But anyway, there's a lot of lore and stories about werewolves. Depending on what time period you want to look into, you can find stories on werewolves. So, what we're going to look at in this video is Werewolf: The Dark Ages. This book has 179 pages and a copyright of 1999. This book was published by White Wolf Games, and all of the artwork in this book is in black and white. And it's pretty decent. So let's go ahead and look at that artwork. This is the first picture we see when we open the book. All of the artwork in this book is in black and white. And it's pretty decent and goes a long way to setting a proper tone and mood for this game in the Dark Ages. And like all old World of Darkness games, each chapter begins with a full-page picture. To use this book, what you're going to need is, of course, a copy of this book and a copy of the core rule book for Werewolf: The Apocalypse. You also need as many 10-sided dice as you can get your hands on. Now, the Vampire: The Dark Ages game is not needed for this, but it would be a very useful book to have. It's a little bit bigger book, so it's a little bit more descriptive as far as the Dark Ages goes. You definitely don't need it, but it would be helpful. The character creation in this game is standard as far as World of Darkness games go, and is the exact same thing as making up a character in Werewolf: The Apocalypse. But we'll go ahead and run through it anyway. The first thing you do is you figure up your attributes. There are 3 categories of attributes in this game. They are your physical attributes, your social attributes, and your mental attributes. Each of these categories have 3 attributes to them, giving you a grand total of 9 attributes. And each of these attributes will start with 1 dot in them. And they range from 1 dot to 5 dots. Your first dot is free. And what a dot is it represents how many 10-sided dice you'll roll when you make a test with this attribute. Then you'll prioritize the categories. The category, which is most important, whether it be your physical, your social, or your mental, will get 7 dots to split up amongst them, not counting the first dot free. The next most important will get 5 more dots, and the least most important will get 3 more dots. After you got your attributes figured up, you'll want to figure up your abilities. There are 3 categories of abilities. There are talents, skills, and knowledges. And these will rank from 0 dots to 5 dots. No freebie dots. And again, you'll prioritize categories. And whichever is your most important amongst these 3 will get 13 dots to split up amongst the abilities underneath it. The next most important will get 9, and your least most important will get 5. After that, you'll want to pick a tribe. And the tribes are pretty much the same as in Werewolf: The Apocalypse, with 1 slight exception. Well, 2. We'll get to those. And the tribes are the Black Furies, the Bone Gnawers, the Children of Gaia, the Fiona, the Fenrir, which eventually becomes the Get a Fenris in Werewolf: The Apocalypse. And you have the Red Talons, the Shadow Lords, the Silent Striders, the Silver Fangs, and the Warders. The Warders are what will become the Glasswalkers in Werewolf: The Apocalypse. After you got your tribe, you want to pick a breed. There are 3 breeds in this game. They are the Homid, the Metis, and the Lupus. After you got your breed, you'll want to pick an allspice. An allspice is what sign of the moon you were born under. There is the Ragabash, the Thurge, the Philodox, the Gillard, and the Arun. After all that, you'll get 5 points for backgrounds. And your choice in backgrounds is kind of restricted to what your clan, to what your tribe says you can and can't have. After backgrounds, you'll get 1 gift from your starting gift list in each your tribe, your breed, and your allspice, for a total of 3 gifts. After that, you'll figure up your renown, which is determined by your allspice. Your rage, your starting rage, is also determined by your allspice. Your starting gnosis by your breed, and your willpower is determined by your tribe. All characters start at rank 1. After all this, you'll get 15 freebie points to alter the choices you've made. And there's a chart in here that tells you how much each thing costs. There are also brand new merits and flaws in here that you can choose. And the abilities in this game, some of them are different than what you'll find in the Werewolf of the Apocalypse, and they'll go over the differences in here. If it's not mentioned, then it's pretty much the same as in Werewolf of the Apocalypse. But stuff like firearms is not in here. That is instead replaced with archery, and you get the idea. You're not going to find a computer skill or anything like that. Anyway, after that, your character should be all done. And the book goes into laying out the world for werewolves in the Dark Ages. It is a much darker time for werewolves, and at the same time, it's a much better time. First off, superstition runs rampant in the Dark Ages. People absolutely do believe in werewolves. So there's none of this modern science says it's not real. Disbelief really doesn't exist. Everybody believes in werewolves. So it's kind of harder to hide. And at the same time, werewolves have a little bit of an easy time hiding, depending on how they play things out. But you got that going on. There's all kinds of witch hunts going on, so you have to watch for that. But at the same time, the worm has not gotten as far along as it has. There's not the mass pollution that there is in the modern era. So you got that. That's a trade-off. The book goes into how werewolves interact with the peasantry, nobles, other shapeshifters, and so forth. And it even talks about how the different breeds get along. Metis are a very rare thing in this game. The metis, of course, is something that shouldn't be. It's against the litany. And so the other werewolves make sure that metis never live to see adulthood, for whatever that means. But some do, and so you can play a metis, but they're a very rare thing. The worm, like I said, hasn't tainted things as badly as they are in the modern era, and the worm's main servant in Werewolf of the Apocalypse, the one that's most feared and most numerous and just drowning the werewolves in their numbers and stuff, are the Black Spiral Dancers. In the Dark Ages, they just came to be. The White Howlers just fell and walked the spiral, or danced the spiral, and so there's not very many of them, and the werewolves in the Dark Ages see them as a pathetic joke. They're something to be pitied and destroyed, but pose no threat whatsoever. You'll still run into them, and they will still be cunning, vicious bad guys, but a few centuries later, they will massively outnumber the werewolves and be a very big threat. But like I said, not that big of a threat in here. And it talks a little bit about vampires and changelings and mages, so you can throw them in the games if you want. And it also tells about how things are, touches a little bit on different areas in Europe and North Africa, and it'll tell you things like what the land is like, what the politics of the area is like, what the werewolves in that area is, how the other creatures are, like vampires, mages, and so forth. And it'll talk about the future of the area up to 200 years, so you can kind of get an idea of where things are going. Not anything very in depth, but just a couple of paragraphs. And it also tells you some places of note, like locations, cities you might want to visit, landmarks, that kind of thing. Not very many, just enough to get the wheels turning. And it covers quite a bit, but it just kind of touches a little. Not as much as in the Dark Ages vampire game, but enough to get you by. It also has a chapter in here devoted to crossing over your vampire game with your werewolf game, and tells you how different powers affect each other and so forth. And how werewolf's blood works with vampires or whatever. Anyway, it's got the little crossover in there if you're interested. Nothing really in depth, but and nothing that's not been said before, but it's there. You got an appendix in the back which has all your equipment and stuff. And also in the back you got a 4-page character sheet that you can photocopy and use. So that's pretty neat. And that's really about it. It just kind of goes through things and makes it so you can take your Werewolf the Apocalypse game into the Dark Ages. It's got, of course, a cheat chart in here that tells you, that runs through a quick character generation for you. So they have those in the core book too. And this brings me to 3 questions. Would I play a character in this game? And like I've said before, I've kind of moved on from the old World of Darkness, so I wouldn't. Would I run this game? And again, I've moved on from the old World of Darkness, so I wouldn't run it myself. But when I have used this book, when I ran Vampire the Dark Ages, I did use this book for my werewolf NPCs, but I've never actually had anybody play a werewolf in my Dark Ages game. Would I recommend this book? And like Dark Ages Vampire, I would recommend it. The World of Darkness is great. There's a lot of great stuff there, but myself, I've moved on from it. If you are a fan of Werewolf the Apocalypse, then you probably want to check this out, because it's a way you can do something different and play the game you love. And that's always a nifty thing. So thank you for joining me at the look at Werewolf the Dark Ages, and hopefully you'll join me next time where we'll talk about something else. Bye.